Okay, technology's great when it works, but right now we're having a little bit of a snafu. So the good news is we're in fairly intimate quarters, and we can make sure that, can everybody hear me? I'm not going to be doing a lot of the talking, but I'm going to kick things off. My name is Joe Newgardy. I'm the superintendent here in Addison. I've been in the district 8 years, but just started the superintendency in July. So I have the honor of kind of opening up this ceremony. And it's interesting, we always talk about lessons and giving kids history lessons. Well, I've had a history lesson myself. I thought I knew a lot about the district. I've been here 8 years. I've heard, you know, a lot. Sometimes the things you hear are the not so positive things. So this was very rewarding to hear something very positive about Marty Easton. And interestingly enough, he started in the district before I was born, and he retired while I think I was just finishing college when he retired. So he was here certainly well before my time, but I have to tell you, in doing a little research and a little homework for myself to be able to just open up the ceremonies, I'm incredibly impressed by what I did here. And I'm really big on dedication and passion and commitment to your job. I mean, that's, other than family, that's #1 for me personally. And I hope I've lived that my entire work career. And everything that I've heard about Marty is exactly that. So I'm positive that if we ever worked together, we would have gotten along just perfectly, because I think we have that same commitment to doing quality work. So it's great to hear the stories. I love history. I love hearing the positive history of Addison and people that work for the district. And all I heard was, you know, incredible accolades. And one of the things that's interesting that, you know, helped me tie back a lot of what I heard while I was here, we always talked about how great the transportation department was, and all the accolades really that statewide that we've received over the years, but no one ever gave me the real history lesson of why we were in the position we were in transportation. And so I always knew we had a great department, we have a great department, and we are known around the state for the quality that we have. But I guess I never really went back far enough in the history to figure out where that all started. And what I'm finding out is it started with Marty. And so that's impressive. I mean, we have a large fleet. We have an enclosed garage that, you know, interestingly enough, he was a clerk of the works when they were putting the facility together. So what a better way to advocate for your department than to be the clerk of the works when they're helping to build the facility that's going to store your buses and all that. So so a lot of history there that's very positive. We have his wife Peg is here, and his 2 of his children are here, Marty Jr. and Linda. So certainly we'll be getting to know them a little bit better here as we get going. So I think my job's pretty much over. I was able to just welcome everybody and learn a little bit of history about the district and about Marty. So the real person that's going to kind of lead the show here and do the heavy lifting here is Dean. And you know, just talking with Dean, it is also, and listening to him talk about Marty, I mean, he glows when he talks about Marty. I mean, literally. I mean, he's just, it's incredible to see someone that another individual had such an impact on him and his life. So it's been fun to kind of get up to speed on, again, some of the history and to kind of talk with Dean a little bit about some of the history. So I'm going to let Dean kind of take over from here. But thanks for coming, and I hope we put out a nice ceremony and dedication for Marty. Thank you.
Well, I don't know where to begin, but first of all, I would like to welcome everybody here. I'd like to thank you for you coming out to help celebrate this time that we can spend together in honor of Martin. Martin did a lot of great things for our district. for our community. And as I look around the room here, I mean, there's a lot of familiar faces and a lot of familiar things that happened over the years. And I would like to, what we would like to do is just call on some individuals and have them come up and speak a few words of the relationship of what's happened with them and tell some stories and make it a enjoyable evening here. And first of all, I'd like to call on our board president, so she'd like to come up, Lucinda, and say a few words.
As you mentioned, my name is Lucinda Sutton. I'm the president of the Board of Education here in Addison. I didn't know Mr. Easton, and I know some of the people that are here tonight who love him as a dear friend, and I've heard about him over the years, and certainly, as Mr. Diagardi mentioned, we do have a great reputation for our transportation department. What I can speak of is my knowledge of how everyone in this district plays a key part in helping to reach our goal of educating our students to meet the next step in their life and hopefully prepare them to be ready to go on to the next level, whether that's their job or their further education. I'm nervous. I agreed to come up here. I know that everyone who works in this district plays a big part in it, and I know the transportation department is every bit as important as any other department in the district, and I know that Mr. Easton played a big role in making it what it is today. So I won't keep you any longer. It's just really nice to have recognize people who do great things in this community, because as those of us with different knowledge, there are many who live here and do great things, live here and work here, and are proud to live here and work here. And it's nice to come out tonight and celebrate one of those people. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucinda. We still have some more board members here, and I think we had, where's our vice president? Is he here? Bill, you want to come and say something? You're on the board now. I know you've got some story or something to tell us about Marty when you was in high school or something like that.
My wife worked he was good.
I got nominated, just like you did Lucinda. Can you imagine that? I drove school bus, Marty and I know why I did, because my husband's mother drove school bus, Marty. His sister drove school bus, Jean. My sister Helen here drove school bus. And I went and said, sure, you know. Dean took me out on the back roads and trained me how to drive the school bus. And Martin told us, you know, every year we would have a speech, okay, it's fall. What do we watch for, guys, in the fall? Deer. What else? Coming off the trees. The trees are slipperier than snow. Remember that, right, Dee? Did you tell us that every fall? Every season we knew what we were going to hear about, but he knew. And on the lighter side, he used to know, you know, we would see the population. We thought it was kind of getting low, maybe the student, you know, population was getting a little low. And we'd come in and say something about, well, so-and-so's going to have a baby, and so-and-so's going to have a baby. And Martin would say, job security. He always had the same, you know, like I said, every season there was something. He had the meetings, we always had good times, but he ran a tight ship. And he was fair. That's what I can say about him, he was fair. And he has a department that said, you are bus drivers, you are responsible for a lot of lives.
Ed, would you like to come up and say a few words here?
It's been about 10 minutes since he approached me and said, think of some stories. And almost everyone went through my mind, I can't tell the next company. I was a member of the family for 15 years, so I knew Marty very well. And I also served 5 years on the school board. And I'm like Joe, we never knew the details either. All we did is hear how great, the district was and how recognized it was throughout the state. But I can think a couple stories. I used to live here in Addison and work in Corning. So every morning on the way to work, I get behind a school bus, along with about 20 other cars, and they would never pull over. So it would take me 20 minutes. There were houses back then, all the way from here to Morley. Now, so there were the Tucker Farm and the Pinkman and the Waters and the Towson. It would take forever. And I was downtown one day talking to some people that was also getting in that line every morning, and I said, I'll take care of this. I got connected. So the next time I was down to his house, I brought it up. And I said, boy, that bus driver just pulled over. It's what a pain. We can't get to work. He looked me right behind and he said, I'll tell you just what I tell everybody else. If you don't want to get behind that bus, you leave 5 minutes earlier. That was the end of that. Anyway, he used to tell everybody that I was his new boss, because we all knew who the real boss was. When I was on the board, there was a lot of turmoil here in the district, but nothing was transportation. No problems ever. Marty handled everything. He liked his employees. He always spoke so high. I remember the dean and Jim Harrington. And I can't remember last week, let alone who else was working there, but he always spoke so highly of his employees and his workers. But I knew Marty outside of work also. I thought maybe a couple things there. I golfed a lot with Marty, both on the same team. Everybody's going to say great things about Marty, but they never played golf with him. Nothing would upset him more than missing a 3-foot putt. Well, there was one thing, when he lost a golf ball. He taught me a few more words. I know on the golf course. We had a lot of fun. And he was president of our league. We golfed together right on Wednesday night. And we had our banquet at the end of the year. And Floyd probably remembers this, wherever Floyd is. He would, all year, Marty would try to find a good dirty joke about golf. So we'd eat, we'd have French break, bring the steak, and we'd have our banquet, and then it was time for the meeting, and Marty would get up, he ran the meeting, tell that morning joke, and we'd all boo. He'd sit there and boo, boo, and then he'd take a bow and go on with the meeting. But we had a lot of fun back in those days. I wish I had more time, Dean. I know I could think of some good ones that nobody else would know. But anyway, I wish Marty could be here for this. And I think all the time, being a teacher, being a former teacher, I'm retired now, how good it feels to have a former student tell you you touched their life. And Marty touched all our lives. It's too bad. I bet he didn't know that from a lot of us. It's too bad, he wasn't here so we could say that to him. I'm sure he's looking down and this in humor. If you're listening, Marty, that time you missed that 3-foot putt, that was me that laughed.
Thanks, Ed. I always think about some of the stories that Marty used to tell. Remember when we relate back to when the buses were all out in the district and drivers owned their own buses, and George could relate to this. Phil Bliss, I lived up on Orr Hill, had an old real bus, and cold weather, couldn't start it in the morning, and he always backed it up on the hill to get it started. They'd run it down the hill and get it started in the morning. Well, he'd run it down the hill and it wouldn't start. So Marty had to go up to help get the bus started. The way that he got the bus started was, it was when you had the old crank, you cranked them. It was so cold that you couldn't crank the engine. So what they would do, Marty would take an old blowtorch and he'd warm the manifold, heat the manifold all up, and then fill it in and set on the starter and Marty would get out and turn the crank to get the bus started. And that's the way they got the bus started. Marty told us, remember, those are things that went on over the years, and we just had a good time reminiscing about. We'll just like to keep on going here. I see a lot of faces down here. George, would you like to sit up here to say something? George worked for Marty probably as long as anybody in the district, or longer.
Well, Marty and I worked together for about 30 years, and we had some good times and some bad times. But some of the things that we did was, one time we had government surplus. We used to get government surplus. Well, they gave us a 4x4, and it was in Rome. And they said, it starts, it runs, come get it. So Marty and I got in the car and drove up to get it. Well, we got there, it started, couldn't get it to run. The drive shaft was bent, so we overhauled the truck. Still couldn't get it to run, so we hooked on it with the school car. Well, I drove the car in February, and it was cold. Marty's in that old truck, all steamed up, you couldn't see out. I'm coming down the road, 40, 45, 50. Finally, I stopped to see if he wanted to brake, and he said, "You're going to kill me." "You're driving too fast, I can't see nothing." So we kept coming. We towed it all the way from Rome to Edge. And that's the kind of things that Marty and I did together. And we laughed about it. And then later, we had a 6x6 offered to us. Come get it. They said, it's a good shape. So we said, okay, where is it? It's in McCarthy Field on Long Island. Marty said, we're not driving down there to get it. So we rented Addison Farm Equipment's truck, and we drove that down and said, we'll bring it home the right way. So we got down there, same thing, wouldn't run. So there we are, stuck in Long Island. And so my daughter was going to college down there at that time. Marty said, what are we going to do? They said, the gate was closed when we got there. I said, well, I'll call my daughter. We went up and spent the night with her in New York City. Come back the next day, loaded the truck, brought it home. Well, we were two country boys, never been to New York City to drive. So we took turns driving. We got to New York. Fortunately, it was Marty's turn to drive. So we got to New York, and of course all these signs, no commercial traffic, no commercial traffic. So we ended up right down in the heart of Brooklyn. I'll tell you, Marty, I was fortunate Marty was right. But that's just a couple of the stories, and I had 30 years of them, so I could probably go on forever, but I won't.
to return a couple old buses. We got new buses in, and they wanted the old buses back, and so we agreed to take them to Buffalo. Of course, we got paid a little bit for taking them up there, so we thought, well, this would be a good deal. And so we conned their wives in to go with us, and they were going to drive the car while we drove the bus, and then come back. Well, I had an old Volkswagen bus, and needless to say, in February, you got to know what weather like this in Buffalo. So Peg and Joanne were driving the bus, or the Volkswagen bus, and the wind is blowing so hard, and if you ever drove one of them, it's like driving a big bus. She went home, she came home, her wrist was sore from holding on to that. We came through the snowstorms, and the wind was terrible, but we made it, and it was a long day, but that was one of them. After we got back, it was a fun time to talk about it, but it wasn't that day. Okay, we got some more people here that I know that are eager to talk, and I'd like to call on John and Norma. I'm sure they got some exciting stories to tell.
I guess it's according to what kind of story. First of all, before we knew Marty, really, he and his wife hitched us up to get married. And John said to Marty, "Oh no, I wouldn't go out with anything that you'd show me." All that happened was, can I tell that?
Yeah.
Was that John had gone and met her when she was working, and he found out that she had 5 children. So he wanted to get Marty in with his 5 children. And so then he was going overseas, and by the time he got overseas,
I left overseas.
and then when he got back, they said they wanted us to go with them, and they already had baby. They had this one.
That's right.
And so then he said to John, "Well, geez, are you ever going to get married?" She said, "Why?" He said, "Well, because I looked to you for 6 or 7 children that I could put you around." But we were certainly always looking for Marty with the kids because he took such good care of the children on the buses. And he was a good man. Good man.
Well, Marty and I were friends from back in the 40s, back in the days when tried to ranch took care of the school buses up in the garage up where the auction house is now. And Marty and I became good friends. I never worked for him, but we were good friends and traveled together for years and years. And Marty was talking about commitment. He would go out and drive the back roads. We live on Simon Hill where it still gets pretty serious. Back in those days, it was serious. And he would get out and drive the roads at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning to make sure that the buses would get through. He had a good working relationship with the town supervisor, the road supervisor. And if he gave up on getting the bus through, everybody better stay home. That was going to be tough. But we were fast friends for years. Went through a lot of links together. We picked on each other a lot. Marty got me one winter. He got a good one on me. I was snowed in on Simon Hill. The snow was about 8 foot deep in front of the house. Couldn't do anything. I shoveled and everything else. I had about half a case of dynamite in the back of my pickup truck, so I thought I'd blast some of the snow out of the driveway. Missed the outside a little bit, pulled most of the windows out of the front of the house. Yeah, she was
faces out here, and I guess I would open it up at this time. Somebody else would like to come up, anybody who would like to come up and say a few words. We got some takers? Yeah? Okay. All right. Anybody else? Well, if there's anybody else that would like to speak, we would, I guess, oh, the cameraman over here. I think I'll call on him. He's been around for a few years, and he came in behind Martin as supervisor, and of course worked together with Marty and worked together with Bob. So I'd like to turn this over to Bob. He's got some things he wants to say.
Yes, as Dean mentioned, I had the unique opportunity of succeeding Marty within a couple of years after we retired in 1988. 87. I went there in 1990. I'm going to get Mrs. Boyer up here in a minute, but her and I kind of inherited the ways that Marty did things back in his day. And I think if you were to go into our transportation department today, you'd see that a lot of those policies and the way that he did things are still there. I had total faith in what he had done. I knew him personally, and of course I was married to one of the girls. And, I also had the opportunity to play golf with him, and it's strange that I kind of had the same story in mind. The language and how he insulted that little white ball. It's never that ball's fault. But it was a lot of fun to play golf with, and he did have some choice words for his golf and his golf ball. And, but Ruth, why don't you come on up here with me? Ruth is one of the old timers at the transportation department. We still have, believe it or not, we still have 3 people that Martin hired that still work at the bus garage. Ann Blackwell, Diane Gosper, I should say 4, Ruth Boyer, and Dean Bartholomew. Dean's been there since the beginning of time, and Ruth almost. So, but Ruth drove bus for Martin up in, well, she was still driving when I came here in 1990. And she also worked in the office with him for 3 hours a day for, what, 2 or 3 days a week? And I found out, and somebody mentioned him being a workaholic, but I found out that I needed her more than 3 hours a day. So we got her on 5 hours a day, every day, and she's still there doing that. So one little story I like to tell about Ruth, and it's all Martin's fault. Ruth really, really, really enjoys a typewriter. Does anybody know what a typewriter is? But that's one of the things that Marty initiated in the transportation department, and it was probably maybe at the beginning of time with a computer. When I went there, they had a computer, and they had a OSIS program, and Ruth would like to just give you some ideas to what was going on with that.
I think it was near, probably 3 years before he left. Jane Ham and I went to elementary school and took some group courses on how to do students on the list and how to do payroll on the computer. And we came back to the office and did that kind of work, kind of got it going. Now we do most everything on the computer.
Where's your typewriter?
Under my desk.
Let's go. So I retired about, what, a year and a half ago, so I don't even know what she's hiding under her desk now. The typewriter is still there just in case. A lot of you folks probably don't realize it, and I'm not even sure Pat does, but in 1972, there was a real serious school bus accident in Congress, New York, and the bus was hit by a train. 5 kids were killed, 45 people were injured. And as a result of that, New York State initiated training for bus drivers, and that has continued through today. It's called a 1980 program, and it's a real strenuous training program that Martin initiated in our district, and we basically follow that plus new guidelines and procedures that they use all the time today. But, he initiated those programs, and I can tell you I had somewhere 30 to 35 drivers when I took over in 1990, and they were super, super people, and they were well trained, and that's why we have the reputation that we have in New York State as having one of the best transportation departments in the state, because he started that program and did the training that was necessary in the early days. And him and Dean were like this. And I think everything Martin knew, Dean knew. And I think they're probably best buddies or closest friends from day one. And Dean has an immaculate way about him with systemizing. And he doesn't forget anything. And if you ever talk with Dean, he can go back and tell you every little detail of everything that happened in 1958. And like Ed mentioned, I have trouble remembering what happened last week, not long in 1958. But I know I was on a school bus, and I remember 58, 59, and maybe Ed Simons can relate to that, but we had an austerity budget. And that may have been the only year that we had an austerity budget in our district. And I can remember some of the hard things that they went through, and I was grateful that we never had one during my time. But I remember my uncle running out the middle of the road in front of a school bus, and you either stop or hit. And that's how serious it got out in the country was picking up kids. But I'm sure Marty had his hands full dealing with that with parents. And school buses were going by kids, and yet they were being asked to walk to the neighbors and consolidate stops. So that's one of the great things that Marty did in the early days was set up the bus routes. And that's a big, big job with, and I think we had 1,900 kids, something like that when I came here. Now it's down to around 1,150, 1,200 that we transport in Madison. He had the ability to go out there, and the buses weren't all big ones like they are today. But he had the ability to figure out that routing and do it within reason and reasonable time. And even today, those routes are basically the same, other than some that we may have cut or combined in order to save the district some money. It just amazes me as to what he was able to do in setting up the routes. And the people that he had to work with, the drivers were, like I mentioned earlier, Peggy Vance is back there, Sue Sherwood was on board. And, all of those people were just phenomenal to work with. And they were well trained when I came, and Dean and I have done a lot of training over the years since. One other thing that happened back in Marty's day, the first woman bus driver came on board. I had to inquire tonight to find out who she was. Now I think about 75% of them are women. And it's easier to get the ladies out of the home, and their little ones go to school, and we even allow them to take their little ones on the bus with them. It's very, very hard to get bus drivers. So the ladies have helped us out a lot over the years. And the first lady bus driver that we believe was Jean Mosher. Some of you may remember her. You said she worked at the school. She would be Jim Mosher's mother. since then there's been a long line of people that have come and gone in transportation. But I remember hearing Dean tell stories about Marty interviewing these people. They come in this afternoon. Can you drive a standard? Yeah, or no, or whatever. Well, come on, I'll go show you. We need you here tomorrow morning. It doesn't work that way today. It takes close to 2 months to get a new candidate ready to drive it once a day. And they have a great vehicle to drive. It's got air ride, it's got power steering, it's automatic transmission. So technology has changed the school bus also.
Push button doors. Push button doors.
Push button doors now, air doors. No more reaching out. Radios, intercoms, cameras. Cameras were a big investment for the district, but they help an awful lot with student management for the drivers. I've carried on enough. You want anything? Say anything more? I'm good with the microphone. For Ruth and I have carried on as a team in the last 21 years. And her and Martin set up a lot of good things. Even the computer programs that they started back in those days, we continue to use for years. Modern technology has changed a lot of what we do as far as office procedures, but we still talk over the radio, bus drivers, and things like that. And probably the utmost thing that we do is train drivers to make it safe for kids to come to and from school. In closing, I just want to say that Marty set the standards for all of us to follow in transportation and students for Easton. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I always think I just keep thinking stories all the time. I'll tell you one more and then we'll not carry on. Marty, one time, we had the old doors that opened, the doors went out, like it had 2 rods and they kind of crisscross. If they weren't lined up right, they couldn't go to the door. Marty was working on that door and he worked. He got so frustrated because he couldn't get the doors closed. So he went and got a chair and set it right down there and he's studying that door. Studying it, trying to figure it out. And he finally got disgusted with it and he came to me. He had to go to the office or doing something and do something else. He said, see what you can do with that door. So I went out and I looked it all over and I got the idea that, well, we got to change a hole. We got to make a whole different hole. So I took a drill in the hole, door was shut. And he come out. What'd you do to that door? I mean, that was the type of thing. But we all we worked together, and I gotta say that my life, my work, my career, or whatever you say, came from Marty Easton because he taught me everything I know, mechanically wise, and just a true friend, and everything that we did together, and it was fun. I can say that all the years that I went to work, and when I worked for Marty, I never hated a day going to work. It was always something different. Every day, whatever the problem was, we always worked it out. It was a great time. I got one more candidate here. This gentleman here that I'm going to call on, and I'll have to tell you a story about him. Mr. Ed Simons was on the board when Marty went to work and when I went to work for the school district. Marty was appointed, he was a mechanic, I was a mechanic, but then Marty took the transportation supervisor. Well, they needed a head mechanic. And one day, a car drove up in front of the garage, and I was standing in the doorway, and happened to be at science when he was on the school board. He said, I got a question I want to ask you. Okay, Ed. He said, can you handle the head mechanic's job? And I said, Ed, I don't know, but I'll sure try. I said, that's all I want to know. From the way you went. The next thing I knew, I was head mechanic for 33 years. I'd like to call on Ed right now to get up to business and talk, and we're going to have him, once I guess I get it, do what the say that this was all about, that we're going to have.
You're so all in the world.
Listen, Ed, I talked to Ed this afternoon, and he said he had at least 45 minutes to talk. I said, that would be fine, he's got 2 hours.
This is good for something, man. I don't talk as loud as I used to, and I can't do this off speaking like Dean and the Dean asked me if an impassable task to summarize 30 years of service of a man we honor tonight with a memorial plaque to be placed on a prominent place in the bus route. His name was Marty Easton. He was a visionary, and it's what we needed as a district school transportation department. Martin was a leader. He led by example, had a sixth sense of upcoming problems that his buses would have. Some way he seemed to be ahead of upcoming regulations from the state. Never could figure that out. What you see at the bus garage today is no accident. It was and is the result of a young man and his partner in crime, Dean Bartholomew, with a vision of the future. In 1958, under Martin's pressure, I'm sure, the district constructed a 2-bay with lifts, an office, restroom, and hired a second mechanic named Dean Bartholomew to help him. In '59, the board moved Martin to transportation supervisor and Dean to head mechanic. The conditions that Martin and Dean worked under would have made most men say sooner than 14 years of working out of 2K garage, trying to start buses with 0 weather, putting and carrying chains on, just keeping the fleet rolling, say I've had it. There must be a better way of making a living. In 1972, Martin took on a second half as clerk of the works in charge of construction of the complex we have today. All of our buses are under heated conditions. I'm not sure we used to have when I was on 30 buses or so, cars and vans, and I don't know what the total is today. I kind of been away from this a little bit. And Peg and others kind of came to Martin looked on his job as a 24/7 workload week, and the results show. The one thing that comes to my mind that when Martin became transportation supervisor, that meant he was in charge. He didn't allow his department to be micromanaged by anyone. He stood by his convictions and his work, and we know it. It shows it. He knew what was best for the safety of the students, his personnel, and left no doubt for anybody who was in charge. Martin's vision was fulfilled by the common knowledge in the state as the best transportation system in the state. I'm proud to have known Martin and his staff in some small way helped him to achieve his vision in my 24 years on the board of the Transportation Committee. One thing I'm sure about is that whatever Martin said, or a decision he made, you could take it to the bank. It was a fact. There was a brief time after Martin retired, and I was alarmed that what Martin and Dean had built was going under. Then Dean stepped forward with the help of Superintendent Hall to clean up the mess. Bob Johnson was hired to take up Martin's vision, and he did just that. He was in charge. Now Bob's retirement, it falls on the new superintendent, Doug Lewis' shoulders, and Doug's not here tonight, I guess, to continue. And I wish him good luck, and I will tell him and have told him to be his own man. And the road map has been printed out already for him. Peg, our hearts and prayers go out to you and to yours. Thank you for sharing Marty's time and vision and energy with us for all these years. God bless you.
I got another job for him. He didn't have that on his notes. We would like to have Ed present the plaque to
Just one. Who we're gonna say? Bob, come up, Dean, come up.
Ruth.
Ruth.
Go ahead, sorry. Go ahead, sorry.
Marty, transportation supervisor at the Central School, 1938 and 1987. Now, I don't know whether it's been okay to the board to put this on the bus route. But if it happens, you got a problem. Bob? You want to say a couple words? Yes. Okay, go ahead.
The plaque will be put back there, and so that you can all can see it. And we'd also like to say that there's some old pictures back there that I'm sure that it's going to bring back some memories. Some of you won't know who they are, but some of you will. And there's a picture there that I believe, and I've got to verify that with George, I believe it's about 1943 or 44. You're in that picture.
No. Had to be after 48.
Have to be 48, so that's later. We have one for 47.
I went to work at 48.
Okay, so that would be earlier than the other one. Okay, there's another picture back there that Marty's in, and then there's a couple other pictures that was later on.
I can look at that. Well, you got to give a speech on that. Am I done?
You're done, yeah. You're done. Thank you very much, Ed.
Dean.
Okay, this time, okay, this time, I'd like to get Marty and Linda, thank you. Come up, please. It gives me great pleasure to present to you this plaque to take home to you.
Well, you did it, so you have to wash all the seats in the auditorium. So I got home and I nagged you about it before anything came out of my mouth. Why did you get called to the office? Oh no, you're going to get to explain the whole thing. So there was a lot of disadvantages, but he didn't treat us any different than he, in the school, and he instilled in us, I think, what he did for the school as well. So our work was
Oh, the only thing I can think of is that, he always, he never wanted to spend the taxpayers' money unless he had to. And when he was teaching me how to fix my car, we needed a special tool or something, and he had one down at the garage, but he wouldn't go down and borrow it. He wouldn't bring it home to use it on the car. At home, he made me go buy my own tool to use it at home, because he didn't want to use the taxpayers' money by bringing a tool home to use it at home. So that's the way he always thought.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anybody else have anything they would like to present? Did I miss anybody here?
Got another hour.
I would just like to mention something that has changed a lot. And I heard a couple of you folks telling about Marty going out and riding around in the country checking roads in the wintertime, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And initially I did that in the early 90s, but today it's a piece of cake. We have a radio in the bus garage. We can talk to any town truck, any town supervisor, any county truck, any county supervisor anywhere in Steuben County. So we don't go out and ride anymore. And I don't know whether he ever got in a situation when he didn't get back. I know there were some times in the early 90s that you get out in the country and the roads are drifted just terrible. And there probably was some times that Marty didn't make it back in time to make some calls. And today, too, you had the cell phone. And back in those days, you had to get back to the office to make calls to your drivers to tell them not to come in. So just some trivia with some things that have really changed since Martin's day.
One of the things that was real bad back in those early days, that there were no radios on the buses, and if we had a bus break down or get stuck, you had to walk to the nearest telephone. And I walked many, many miles trying to get to people that have been stuck, or try to help them out, or try somebody help me out. And today you can't do that. Children cannot be left on the bus alone. And we used to leave buses, the kids on the bus and walk, or send a kid to walk. There's a telephone to tell them the bus broke down. If we didn't have radios today, it would be a real catastrophe. So, well, we'd like to thank you all for coming. I'm going to turn it back over to Joe, and he's got a few words here. Thank you very much for coming. Hopefully, enjoy yourself.
Let me add a little bit to the closing of school. As I was going through my administrative training to be a superintendent, I talked to an old veteran superintendent who had been in the business a long time. And one of the things that he said to me, which surprised me at the time, and I couldn't quite grasp it or believe it when he said it, was that he said, he said, we run multi-million-dollar organizations. They're getting more complex every day. And he said, do you know what the toughest decision I have to make as a chief executive officer of a school district, as a superintendent? The toughest decision I have to make with all that we have that's going on is whether to close school or not. And he told me that as I was working on my training, and I'm like, that can't be true. There's a lot going on in schools. You have to make a lot more difficult decisions than that. But now that I'm sitting in the seat, and the second day of school, we had major flood warnings. And the interesting part about Bob, it's interesting Bob talks about the 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning driving around. We don't do that anymore, but I'm up at 2 or 3. I'm on the computer now, checking the weather in motion to see where the storm is going, and losing sleep because of the angst that I feel about whether you make the right call or you don't make the right call. So we're still living that, but we're just doing it in a different way. We're doing it in a 21st century way in terms of tracking the weather on the television and on the computer and even on your cell phone. So just interesting how things evolve. So thank you again for coming. I feel honored and privileged to be able to be a part of this and to just learn more about Marty. It was very interesting again to hear the history and then to hear some of the stories. It is too bad that he couldn't be a part of this because he probably doesn't know how much of an impact he's made on a couple of generations of people here in this community. So maybe we can learn from this, and the next time we do one of these, we'll do it while they're still with us so that they can appreciate it and enjoy it kind of in their later years. So thanks again for coming. We still have plenty of cookies and punch, so please indulge yourself on your way out, and we have the plaque and the pictures as well. Thank you.
Nice speech there.